In the film Hollywoodgate, we get an inside look at the Taliban during the year after they took control of Afghanistan. I speak to the director, Ibrahim Nash'at. I'm Tom Powers, and this is Pure Nonfiction. After the Taliban retook power in 2021, when most outside journalists were leaving Afghanistan, Ibrahim Nash'at decided to move there. He grew up in Egypt and now works as a journalist in Berlin. He had never been to Afghanistan, but he took inspiration from the filmmaker Talal Durki, who lived undercover in Syria with an offshoot of Al-Qaeda, for his 2018 film Of Fathers and Sons. You can hear my interview with Talal on episode 96. Ibrahim made the journey to Kabul and eventually embedded with Malawi Mansour, the head of the Taliban's Air Force. Near the start of the film, Ibrahim joins a group of Taliban on an eerie nighttime drive to inspect an abandoned U.S. base, once reportedly run by the CIA. They enter through a door labeled Hollywoodgate in stenciled letters. Inside, they discover a vast array of military machinery. It's estimated that the U.S. left behind $7 billion worth of equipment, including helicopters and airplanes, that were intentionally damaged during the hasty evacuation. The Taliban commander Mansour instructs his men to repair whatever can be salvaged. At first, that order appears unrealistic, considering the shortage of resources and knowledge. But nearly a year later, Ibrahim captures an astonishing scene where the Taliban proudly stage a military parade with a fleet of repaired helicopters flying overhead. In our conversation, Ibrahim speaks about the key role played by his Afghan translator. He also discusses the importance of Jess Search, the co-founder of Doc Society, who died in 2023. You'll also hear about Jess in our next episode. I reached Ibrahim in Berlin and started by asking about his early experiences picking up a camera as a young man in Egypt.
My career in journalism more or less started in the Egyptian Revolution because I was like a little tiny guy that couldn't throw rocks or do anything during that time. I was in 2011, 21 years old, and I saw some guys with cameras and I started to interact with them, and through them I got to edit my first video ever. I got to hold the camera for the first time ever in my life, and these were the guys that told me you should think about working in such career because you've got the eye for someone that can tell a story. And back then I was studying pharmacy, and I graduated from pharmacy, and I started preparing for my master's as a microbiologist. And during that time, I couldn't continue working in pharmacy, and I shifted completely to try to work in film. And when The Square came out by Jihan and Karim, and I saw it, I was like, oh, if I knew that I could do this, I would have filmed something completely different during the revolution. So that's how I got introduced to Verity documentaries, basically.
And so I know you have worked for different news organizations over that time. I wonder what you were, learning over those years that led up to making Hollywoodgate, and maybe was there a feeling you had working in short form reportage that made you want to do something longer?
I think the purpose from the beginning, actually before even joining journalism, was to make films. I was fascinated by based on a true story films, and then when I saw The Square, I was like, okay, I could actually do true story films this way. And I got fascinated by the idea, but it was not very easy, because when you start very young, you're like an empty pot. You think you can tell a story, but there's no story to tell because you don't have the inputs that could allow you to do that. And what happened to me in journalism, that they have put so many information and knowledge in my head through the years of following up what's going on around the world, or writing about it, or filming something, or meeting with like world leaders and understanding how this one thinks and how this one thinks and how this one thinks, and spending a lot of time with important people off camera. And this experience that I went through is basically going inside the mixer of a lot of information, filling up my pot until I was like, okay, I think I'm ready now to pursue documentary filmmaking. And I started as an editor with with Talal Dirki in his last film, Under the Sky of Damascus. And during this process, the idea of Hollywoodgate came to both of us, and we started working on that.
So, shifting to Afghanistan, I mean, you were only 10 years old when the U.S. and its allies first invaded Afghanistan in 2001. As you grew up, what was your perspective on the country?
My perspective on the country was always affected by the fact that I did not feel for any of the sides, because both sides were pumping up their propaganda on us. And I was growing up in Egypt. One side was saying that Taliban's are heroes, and the other side were saying that they are just terrorists and killers. And in my point of view, there is someone that is in someone else's territory killing them. So there is this sense of everybody has to defend their own home and not let an invader come to their home. But there was also the other sense of, I know these guys are using the religion and using all the ways and tools to use the people. And if they come to power, they will not be any different of an outsider, except that they are not an outsider, which will make it even harder to get rid of them. So from a very young age, I grew up with this kind of resistance towards the idea of war, but also the idea of extremism. And this has been affecting my work mainly in journalism, and it comes again in Hollywoodgate.
So you were working with Talal Dirki in Berlin. He had made a project kind of similar in spirit in his film of Fathers and Sons, where he embedded himself in an undercover way amongst al-Qaeda fundamentalists in Syria. So as you were discussing this idea to go to Afghanistan with Talal, what was he sharing with you, based on his experiences?
He said if you could get the access, then we can make such a film. And for me, having Talal from the beginning is enough confirmation that such formula could work, that you could film with the Taliban and yet make a movie that gets to be seen by the whole world and makes you understand what's going on in Afghanistan from a different lens. Not the lens of the Taliban, of course, from the lens of someone that got to live with them. So Talal was sharing with me mainly how he was able to cope with living with al-Nusra or al-Qaeda for 2 years, and he was telling me like some techniques of what he was doing and how he would spend his time and how he would focus on his mental health when he's there and what could keep him going. And he would share with me a lot of things, like, for example, he told me if things gets too hard around you, just focus on the monitor of your camera. And remember that every frame that you're recording now is only going to be recorded by you, because no one has been in this space except you. And remember that the shot you're taking is going to stay forever, and the feeling you're having is going to go away, and you will be able to deal with it later. Which later in therapy, of course, I knew that this is a dissociation technique that Taral was telling me used to cope with the traumas happening around you.
Well, I've heard you talk about being in therapy before, and I want to come back to that in a little bit. But when you first went to Afghanistan, what were you thinking you were going to do, and what were the things that you realized once you got there were different than what you might have conceived before?
I thought that I'm gonna make a movie about the Congress of the Taliban, which is called Shura. This was the original idea that I went to and I proposed, and I got approval to get to Afghanistan on. But when I got there, the guy that I was supposed to work with just disappeared. The local fixer that allowed me in the first place to be in Afghanistan and has put me in contact with the Taliban, and I found myself there without him, with a Talibani translator that he has put me in contact with. So the original idea has quickly collapsed. And when I thought that my mission in Afghanistan is completely doomed and it's gonna fail, I informed this Talibani translator that I'm just gonna leave the country. I'm running out of money and there is no chance I could get what I wanted. These guys will never ever allow anyone into their their shura or their constitution or the Congress room because of whatever they are doing today. And I could quickly read that all of these promises are fake and we're going to let women be free, and all of these Taliban 0.0 lies are lies, and they are just who they are. They're just using political cover. So I could quickly read that and be confirmed of my original thought becomes confirmed. And when I was about to leave, he said, but you would leave without filming anything. You just could film with some younger Talibans. And he took me to film with some younger Talibans inside Hollywoodgate. And when I saw Hollywoodgate, I realized that this was the story that I'm supposed to do, and I will do whatever it takes to stay here and continue filming. And the year went on.
I mean, can you tell me a little bit more about the motivations of this Taliban fixer? The way you describe it, it sounds like he was eager to try to get you to stay.
He was not a Taliban fixer. He was just a translator that the fixer put me in contact with. He was just a Taliban that I was working with me as a translator, and I was paying him money for translating. And after a while, he felt that I was leaving very sad, and it's known for Afghans to be very hospitable. If you've seen the American armies, they went there, they told the Afghans, hey, you want to support us? And then instead of us on the front line killing the Taliban, they were like, we trust you, we'll do that for you. So Afghans in general are very generous people, and when they trust someone, they fully trust them. Even if the US betrayed them, they remain as they are. And even if they are Talibans, they have this Afghan nature, and his Afghan nature that he felt sorry for me for failing to achieve what I wanted, and he wanted to help in a way or another. So he introduced me to the real story that I'm supposed to do.
I've heard you talk about your translator as being a key person who you eventually helped get out of Afghanistan.
But that's a different translator.
That's a different translator.
This is the initial one.
Okay. So can you talk to me about the person who became your key translator and what that relationship was like?
So after the first 40 days, I was working with this old Taliban guy that allowed me to get an access to Hollywoodgate, or actually to see Hollywoodgate. He didn't even help me with the access. I had to find my ways of getting the access, but he allowed me to know that the base, the CIA base, exists. I got really tired of him not being able to speak really good Arabic, and I proposed that to them, that I would like to replace him with this younger Taliban that I met in Kabul, who speaks perfect Arabic because he grew up in Saudi, and I met him, and then he started working with me, and quickly we started to discover the story about the weapons. So I had to sit with him and tell him, Adil, if you continue working with me, this is going to be very dangerous. You've got to leave the country. And he said, this makes me want to work with you more. It's like, because you want to leave the country? He said, no, because I want to show the world what's happening to us. So the days started to go by, and he became my companion in all the suffering. And whatever I went through, he was the only human being that I could sit and at least try to talk to a bit about my feelings or my emotions, and we would share the same feelings, which we never really spoke about it openly when we were in Kabul, because we were afraid always with the security that's accompanying us, or that they have bugged anything around us. So we never really spoke until we had to pull him out of Afghanistan after the shooting was over, and he moved to Berlin. And when he came here and we sat together, we started to open up about everything that was happening with us. And when you go through these days with someone, you owe him your life. He saved my life in so many situations, especially that he wasn't translating the bad things that they were saying about me, because I once told them, don't translate these things, and he never translated it till the end of the journey, and he kept everything only for himself. So he was the one that was alone and suffering with that. And when we had our screening in the European Parliament, and they asked him this question, it was the first time even I hear him answer that. He was like, and now he speaks English. Back then he didn't speak English, and he said in the European Parliament, I was completely left alone with these feelings, that I have to protect Ibrahim. I have to make sure that I don't react so he doesn't feel like something is wrong, and I have to deal with my own emotions and continue translating with him without a break. So of course it was heavy for him.
So to flesh this out here, there's a memorable moment in the film where the Taliban leader who who you've been following around says in a language you don't understand. He says to his colleagues something to the effect of, well,
If his intentions are bad, he's gonna die soon. Do you know what did Adel translate that? Let's go downstairs.
So your translator, because you told him, don't tell me if they're saying bad things about him, he kept this to himself. He gave you this other translation, let's go downstairs, and for months kind of held to himself that there was a direct threat that your life could be in danger.
Yeah.
During this time, you've filmed, I think, over like a 7-month period. And do I understand correctly that you were taking trips in and out of Afghanistan?
Over the course of 1 year, I've been there for 7 months, over 5 trips. And in between, I was coming back to Berlin, mainly to do therapy.
So what was that process like when you'd, emerge from Afghanistan and then have to go back?
I think with therapy and understanding dissociation, I never really came back because in my head I was still there. I was not able to go out with my friends and be there because in my head I know I'm going to go back to Afghanistan and live with the Taliban, and I need to contain my emotions and be in the same persona that could handle living with the Taliban, and I need to focus completely on my mental ability to continue doing this journey. And by the time it becomes very hard to go back. So it was all about how much I was be able to quickly recover to go back again. It wasn't an easy phase. And in between, we were always, of course, sitting and watching the material and trying to understand what is missing from this material that I need to focus on in the next trip.
So partly these trips coming back to Berlin are a practical filmmaking technique to take the material out of Afghanistan that you've been shooting to think about what you're going to have to do on the next trip. Tell me about the evolution of what we witness in the film, what you were witnessing, because early on we see the Taliban gaining control of all this weaponry and machinery that the U.S. left behind. My impression early on is that they're not going to be equipped to do anything with this machinery because we see in scenes where there are big gaps in their education that don't seem to have prepared them to repair a helicopter. And yet, astonishingly, over the course of the year that you're filming, we watch them make this equipment operational until a scene near the end where it's a kind of parade of military and Air Force equipment that is now in their possession. What was your experience of watching that evolution over that year?
I will say it from the perspective of the edit, because the team that I worked with, led by Talal Derki as a producer, and Shane Boris and Odessa Ray and Atanas Georgiev and Marion Tour as editors, they are like extremely, you know them, they are like top people of the industry people that I even never dreamt of having a master class with, yet I found myself sitting in the editing room with all of them watching the material. And what they convinced me by the time that this story has to be told from the perspective of the cameraman, and we had to relive through the emotions and the memories of the cameraman. So we need to remember what you've been going through, and we make the viewer feel that. It's not going to be a story about the cameraman, but the cameraman is the tool that we're going to use together to bring the story forward and make us understand what's going on. And my perspective when I was shooting, that these guys are not going to be able to do anything. I was just going back with this mentality. I'm sophisticated. They are simple. They are not able to calculate 67 times 100. What kind of leader is that? And I was keeping this mentality. And even when they started to show signs of fixing things, I refused the signs. I didn't take it serious, and I thought that they are talking nonsense. So there's this other scene. Maulai Mansour is walking with the head of the technical head that's responsible for fixing things, and he's asking him, "Did you fix all the Black Hawks?" And he said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Now focus on the fighter jets." And there's a little shake in the camera because I couldn't. My reaction was like, I can't. I didn't really believe what he's saying. Of course, he says we fixed it because maybe he's afraid of him or something. And the day of the parade, when I saw things flying, I got the same shock that we tried to make the viewer see in the film, that there is a huge difference between simplicity and sophistication. And them being simple does not deem that they are idiots or they are not. They are ignorant and are not able to do anything. Everybody has his own way of understanding, intelligence, and delivering, and yet they are not able to calculate 67 times 100, but they are able to fix these weapons. And the lack of understanding of who they are actually was the main reason why this war kept dragging for 20 years and why wars happen in the first place. And if we invest a bit more time in trying to understand what happens on the other side, I don't think we will end up in places where we see wars, because we will stop from doing what we're doing to each other.
I mean, just staying for a moment on their ability to fix this machinery, do you think that was coming from within their own abilities, or do you think that was with the aid of outside help from some other country?
I think it's both. But mainly it's the people that were working for the previous government that now were forced to work for the Taliban are the main people that were working on that, and they are the ones educating them. So you see in another scene that the pilot of the Taliban fighter learning to become a pilot, and the one who's teaching him is someone that was trained by the Americans that now is forced to work for the Taliban because he was left behind, and now he's got to train the Taliban to become pilots. So within the next, now it's 4 years, so probably the Mukhtar is now able to fly Black Hawks as he was dreaming. I don't know if this is true or no, but I think with the dedication he had towards his goals and the dead eye that I saw in him, maybe he already knows today how to fly these Black Hawks. But of course, they have support from different countries, such as Russia, for example.
So you'd mentioned before the role of therapy in helping you process everything you'd been through. When did that begin for you?
It began after CPH talks, which was like 5 months down the line or 6 months down the line. We were having a private pitching there, and I met with Jess Serge, may her soul rest in peace, with Doc Society. And Jess met me, and she really liked the project, and she said, we want to support this project, but it takes some time to get you money. But what I want to really ask you is, how are you? I said, I'm fine. And she kept asking from different ways until I started to cry, and I broke down. It was very emotional. It was 5 of us, me, her, and Talal, and Shanida, and someone else from Doc Society. And we were just all sitting there and crying. And she said, listen, what you need the most is therapy. I cannot get you a grant now for the film, but I can get you therapy really quickly. I was like, I don't need therapy. She said, you need therapy. And in my head, I think therapy is not for me, it's for some white person sitting at home and the weather is bad. So this is my understanding of therapy. I have not been educated about therapy, so all of the images I get from therapy are from the movies, And I refused in the beginning, but I knew that if I don't take the therapy, I'm going to lose someone that is very emotionally involved in me, and she was the first to ever believe in me in the industry, besides Talal. So I wanted to build this friendship with her, and I accepted to do the therapy, which completely changed my life, and it brought us closer, and it has helped me make the film. It has helped the whole translation team went through the same therapy that I went through. The editors went through it. Talal himself got the therapy. It was through Rory Peck Trust, and and then just passed away. May her soul rest in peace. So she's left a great impact on all of us and on the film.
Wow, I didn't know any of that. That's extraordinary. And for you going through the process of therapy, did you understand right away the how it could help, or did it take you a while?
It didn't take me a while, but it was a bit of a struggle because there is a huge difference between PTSD therapy and therapy to cope with what's going on. And in the beginning, what I was doing was not PTSD, was to cope, to allow me to continue working without putting myself in more dangerous places and being extra careful rather than being just risk taking. Um, so it's definitely a process, and even for me today, I believe that therapy is not just sitting with the therapist. So it could be us now talking about these things and deal with it, or it could be me talking to my wife, or talking with one of my friends, or talking to the therapist, listening to a podcast. So I believe today that as much as one must work on his physical health to improve his body muscles, he must work also on his mental health to improve his brain muscles. Because if you don't improve them, they collapse, they become weaker, and then you fall again for the trauma. It doesn't go away. You just need to keep training yourself to cover it, or at least to deal with it, not to cover it.
That does feel like a radical shift in a traditional uh, journalist mentality, which is to, you know, contain feelings, to try to disassociate, to use a word that you invoked before, to not talk about the emotional effects of what this means.
I think I've always wanted to be who I am. I just didn't have the guts. I didn't have the belief in me. I didn't believe I could do art. That's why I was comfortable doing journalism for over 10 years. And doing this film, there was a fight within myself that I could do it. Sitting with you here today and having the appreciation for the film just gives me hope that I could do it, and I hope I can do it again. So me as a journalist, I never liked it because I wanted to do more. I wanted to explore more, and I wanted to put emotions, and there was no space for it. And in this field, in the documentary making, real variety documentaries, when you get to live with the people and try to make the story out of their life and not just rely on words but rely on the scenes in front of you, this takes a lot of emotional work to get through it. And I'm very happy I went through this because it has made me align with my inner child needs, I guess.
So you've gone through this experience of filming in a very extreme situation of a society that that's hostile to journalism, to reportage. But in many parts of the world today, there's different levels of hostility towards journalism. Maybe not quite as extreme as what you went through, but hostile enough. In the worst cases, journalists are under threats of violence. In other cases, it's just extremely difficult to do that work. As we seem to be entering an age where more and more people, more and more journalists are going to be working in hostile environments, what do you think can be learned from your experience?
I think I cannot really give an advice to a journalist through my experience, because if I went for this as a journalist, I would have taken 3 weeks and of shooting and left, and I got the story and I got the access, and it would become a very big report. I can give the advice for journalists who wants to document something in a cinematic style is be patient, and whatever happens in front of you is not the end of the story. The story will continue, and you have to be patient until the story forms in front of you. Me as a journalist, I would not have spent any time doing this movie, but I had the intention of making cinema verite from the very first second. And even as you said, you see in the film, the Taliban describes for them what I told them from the first day. He's making a movie, it's like fiction but with real people. So from the beginning he described that this guy is after a cinema verite documentary, and this was my purpose from the beginning.
want to thank Ibrahim Nash'at for speaking with me. His film Hollywoodgate is now available on Jolt Films. See our show notes for details. Hollywoodgate is one of 15 films on the Oscars shortlist for documentary feature. We've now interviewed 12 of those directors, with more to come this week. January will be a busy month for us, including extensive coverage of the Sundance Film Festival in our newsletter written by Bella Racklin. You'll find the newsletter Doc Voices on Substack. If you want to advertise to our 40,000 readers, send an email to listen@purenonfiction.net. Thanks to our team, series producer Hannah Nordenswan and web designer Cross Strategy. Our theme music is composed by Andre Williams, and our executive producer is Raphael Nehausen. I'm Tom Powers. Follow us on Instagram and visit our website at purenonfiction.net.